Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up today, massive flooding in Washington. We'll have the latest updates for you. But before we get to any of that, time for a story you're not going to get anywhere else.
Talk Radio 570 KVI, an Ari Hoffman Show exclusive.
Do you remember that there was this big pile-up accident last week out in Lacey, Washington on I-5? Do you remember an illegal alien was driving a semi-truck with a car carrier and auto transport on the back, caused a 6-vehicle pile-up after he was driving too fast and plowed into a school bus? Luckily, no kids were on it. You remember 3 people ended up in the hospital? Well, we found out a little something today, and it shouldn't surprise anybody, that he's a career criminal with a long history of crimes, and guess what? ICE filed a detainer on him, and Washington didn't honor it and released him. Anybody surprised, or you just feel like we're on the merry-go-round again and again and again? A criminal illegal alien with a long record of DUIs, drugs, and 2 prior deportations was released back onto the streets of Washington state after allegedly causing a 6-car pileup involving a school bus while driving a semi-truck without a license, even though federal immigration authorities had lodged a detainer and requested custody. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security told us that ICE had filed an immigration detainer for Juan Hernandez Santos, a Mexican national accused of causing the December 4th wreck in Lacey, Washington, when the 18-wheeler he was driving slammed into another vehicle, triggering a multi-car chain reaction that included a school bus on I-5 near Martin Road. Because of Washington's sanctuary policies, local authorities refused to honor the ICE detainer and released him instead of transferring him into federal custody. Now, you have an argument. It's a bad argument, but the people on the left have an argument. Oh, he's just here trying to make a living. Yeah, well, you know what? We don't let anybody fly an airplane. A lot of people look down on truckers. They really, really shouldn't. It is not easy to become a trucker. It is not. A lot of licensing has to go into it. A lot of time has to go into it. And then there's various kinds of licensing you have to get. If you want to carry fuel, forget about it. But this guy not only didn't have a license, but has a history of criminal activity. What, you're going to tell me, oh, he just wanted a better life in the United States? He was deported twice. You know what I think we should do? Find this company in California that this guy was working for, and they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This guy did not have a commercial driver's license, yet was operating a fully loaded semi. It was filled with cars. Earlier reporting also revealed he did not have insurance or a valid medical card, basic documents required to legally operate a commercial rig. Quote, "This dangerous illegal alien has a criminal history including multiple DUIs, possession of a controlled substance, and 2 prior removals from the U.S. He was a walking public safety threat and illegally was driving a massive 18-wheeler when he caused a 6-car pileup involving a school bus on a highway in Washington," said friend of the show, Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. "Thankfully, no children were on the bus. The story could have had a very different tragic ending. The sanctuary politicians in Washington failed once again to protect American citizens by refusing to honor our ICE arrest detainer." You know, I don't think the Democrats even want to have the conversation about criminals. They don't. What do they want to say? You're just rounding up the brown people, right? That's what they want to say. Everybody ever see the movie Life of David Gale? Remember that movie Life of David Gale with Kevin Spacey? And you know when he's getting into that fight with the guy over the death penalty? It's basically about this radical anti-death penalty activist professor. That's what it's about. And he's arguing with, I think, the governor of Texas, who they're painting as the bad guy because he wants the death penalty all the time. And he's in this fight, and he's winning the argument. And then finally, the governor of Texas turns to him, and he says, "Give me one who wasn't guilty." Just one. And David Gale's argument completely falls apart because you're advocating for some of the worst people. And that destroys the argument right there. As I say all the time, give me one that doesn't have a horrible criminal history when we find out they were arrested by ICE. Give me one. I have yet to actually see one yet. By the way, notice how nobody else here in Washington seems to be covering this story, which is mind-boggling. DHS detailed a long history of immigration violations and criminal conduct. In 2005, U.S. Border Patrol removed Hernandez Santos to Mexico. He illegally re-entered the country. A felonious crime, Pramila Jayapal. Yes, it's a felony to re-enter the country once you've been deported, not just a misdemeanor. He was removed again in 2006. At an unknown date and place, he re-entered the U.S. for a third time. Once back in the U.S., his criminal record continued to grow. On May 24, 2008, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office arrested Hernandez Santos for driving without a license. Just weeks later, on June 7, 2008, he was arrested again in California for driving under the influence and a hit and run with property damage. On November 2nd, 2018, he was charged with possession of a controlled substance. On February 24, 2020, the Los Angeles Police Department arrested him again for driving under the influence. So, a guy who has a drug problem, a guy who has a drinking problem, a guy who has an issue drinking and driving, being high while driving, and illegally entering the country multiple times, was driving a semi-truck. A semi-truck. Despite his record, Washington's sanctuary laws meant that when he allegedly caused a 6-car wreck involving a school bus while driving a semi-truck without a CDL, local authorities still declined to turn him over to ICE, even though people went to the hospital. You know, any accident I've been in here in Washington, first of all, never at fault. Second of all, always been an illegal immigrant with no insurance whatsoever. So much so that now you have to carry on your insurance when this happens. Now you're out of pocket. Who are you going to sue? Who are you going to go after? People went to the hospital. That means there's ambulance expenses. That means there's hospital expenses. That means there's follow-up doctor's appointment expenses. On top of the fact that their car was probably totaled because a semi-truck plowed into them. Who's paying for all that? Now they're the ones. What if they have chronic health conditions because of this illegal alien? Now they're the ones who have to deal with this with the rest of their life. And this guy gets released because of Bob Ferguson, Jay Inslee, Nick Brown, Pramila Jayapal. The list goes on. The list goes on and on. And the Democrats don't want to have a discussion about, okay, can we have a nuanced discussion about people who haven't broken the law except for coming here illegally once, haven't lived off welfare? Can we have a nuanced discussion? No. The Democrats just want to say, you're just rounding up the brown people. No. Rounding up criminals no matter who they are. Harjinder Singh, who crossed the border illegally in 2018, obtained a Washington and California CDL despite failing required tests and allegedly not speaking English, was accused of causing the crash in Fort Pierce, Florida that killed 3 people because he made that giant illegal U-turn in the middle of the freeway. Now Florida is suing Washington and California, seeking to bar both states from issuing commercial driver's licenses to non-citizens, which, by the way, that's the rule already. Other recent cases included the San Bernardino County crash involving Jaspreet Singh, an illegal immigrant released after crossing the southern border in 2022 under Joe Biden, who authorities say killed 3 people in a fiery I-10 collision while intoxicated. In Oregon, DHS said Rajendra Kumar, an illegal immigrant from India, who entered unlawfully in 2022 under Joe Biden, was charged after a jackknife semi blocked Highway 20, leading to a collision that killed William Micah Carter and Jennifer Lynn Lower. DHS said he held a California CDL and received Biden-era work authorization. What do we know about all these guys? We even let a terrorist in. We let a terrorist in who was busted driving one of these trucks one time. These cases, as they've unfolded, against the backdrop of the Skyline CDL scandal, where you had this franchise of CDL issuing facilities, licensing schools, that were issuing these fraudulent licenses up and down the West Coast. It's insane. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has launched a broad crackdown on training providers in states that improperly issue CDLs. Nearly 3,000 CDL training providers have been removed from FMCSA's training provider registry for alleged noncompliance, with thousands more placed on notice in a push to root out CDL mills, as they're called, and falsified training records. Last week, Washington admitted it accidentally issued 685 CDLs over 7 years to non-citizens who did not qualify, prompting the U.S. Department of Transportation to call it a blatant breakdown of the state's responsibility to protect the public. Okay, if you issued 685 CDLs to non-citizens accidentally, how many people are on our voter rolls accidentally? How do you accidentally issue a CDL to a non-citizen? Oh, you aren't actually checking? By the way, we know the number's a lot higher than that. A lot higher than that. But instead, now we only have 685. They're saying those are the licenses that are still active. This is a little trick they do where they slide people over to inactive because they don't want you to know where they are. Then when the investigation's done, bring them back over to active. Duffy also, or they got deported. Duffy also threatened to withhold more than $30 million in federal highway funding from Minnesota after auditors found roughly one-third of its non-domiciled CDLs were issued illegally, and he has targeted Pennsylvania with similar warnings. In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott announced a one-day operation on I-40 where DPS and federal partners said they caught 31 illegal alien truck drivers, most holding CDLs issued out of California. You do realize that when you issue a CDL from Washington or California, any other state for that matter, these guys drive cross-country. They drive all over the country. And then you are now responsible for what happens in other states. How much longer is this going to go on for? So don't forget, we found a terrorist who was one of these illegal alien truck drivers who had a CDL that was driving all over the place and caused an accident. And the nightmare scenario, which I've said multiple times, is The Long Kiss Goodnight, the Gina Davis, Samuel L. Jackson movie, where you have a semi-truck filled with explosives that you park on a bridge to blow up the bridge at Niagara Falls or some other tourist area. Operation Honeymoon, as they called it. We're lucky terrorists haven't thought about this stuff more because it's a no-brainer, an absolute no-brainer at this point. And I am petrified something like that could actually happen. Friend of the show, Joe Kent, National Counterterrorism Center Director, was testifying up on Capitol Hill today. Listen very carefully to what he said.
We've made significant progress under President Trump's leadership. We have the jihadis of ISIS and al-Qaeda on the run in Iraq and Syria, thanks to the decisive action and the strikes that we've taken there recently since President Trump took office in January. However, we have a persistent threat from the individuals that were allowed into this country by the previous administration. The number one threat that we have right now, in my view, is the fact that we don't know who came into our country in the last 4 years of Biden's open borders. What we have identified is alarming, and I want to share that with you today. We just recently put out a warning of the heightened risk of terrorist attacks posed to the homeland by terrorists pretty much of all stripes, but in particular from ISIS and from al-Qaeda. NCTC has been crunching the numbers and going through the sheer volume of known and suspected terrorists that are in the country that came in under the Biden administration. So far, NCTC has identified around 18,000 known and suspected terrorists that the Biden administration let come into our country. These are individuals who, under normal circumstances, would never be allowed to enter our country because of their ties to jihadi groups like ISIS and al-Qaeda. Yet the Biden administration not only let them into the country, and in many cases facilitated their entry into the country, just like the entry of the Afghan terrorists who committed the terrorist attack here just before Thanksgiving, killing one of our National Guard members and wounding another. That Afghan was brought into the country as a group of over 100,000 Afghans who were brought here during the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. These individuals, despite what has been reported, were not vetted properly to come into the United States. The individual terrorist who committed the attack in D.C., he was vetted to serve as a soldier in Afghanistan. The Biden administration essentially used his tactical level vetting as a ruse to bring him here and to bring him into our communities, and we've seen the tragic results of that. Now, that Afghan, that attacker, that terrorist, is just one of 88,000. We've identified 2,000 of that group of 88,000 who have ties to terrorist organizations. We're working right now, hand in hand with DHS and with the FBI, to run down this 2,000, the Afghans who came here under Allies Welcome, who have ties to terrorist organizations, and additionally, the other 16,000 individuals with ties to terrorist organizations that Biden let into our country. That is probably the top terrorist threat that we face right now, and that doesn't include the individuals who came here illegally through the open border. That number, alarmingly, remains unknown at this time. We're trying to figure out who those individuals are as well.
18,000 possible terrorists, or with ties to terror, or who are actual terrorists? Okay, let's separate those into three groups for a second. Let's say a third, a third, a third. Do you need me to do the math for you to explain this one for a second? Of how many terrorists might be sitting in our country right now? Let's just say it's a third, a third, a third. Let's say only a third of them are terrorists. We get back to the jelly bean example. If I give you a bowl of jelly beans and say one of them is poisoned, are you going to take the chance on eating the rest of the jelly beans? Here we know at least a third of them are terrorists, and they are living in our country. A minimum of 5,000 to 6,000 ticking time bombs in our country. And now we're giving them driver's licenses? Remember what that guy did with a van to the World Trade Center? Remember what that guy did with a van to the Murrah site, the Murrah building? Do you guys study history at all? I know our audience does, but do the Democrats? Do you know what people do with car bombs, let alone giant 18-wheeler bombs? Are you kidding me? Oklahoma City. That was a van packed with ammonium nitrate. You guys are worried about white supremacists. What do you think that guy was, right? Come on. Can we be real about this for a second here? And we're importing terrorists. That's what we're doing now. And Bob Ferguson and Nick Brown just released one of them. We don't even know if he was a terrorist. We don't know. We do know he was a criminal, and we do know he didn't even have a CDL. This guy didn't even go to the trouble of getting a CDL, but he's a criminal who came into our country at least 3 times illegally and sent 3 people to the hospital, could have killed him. We don't even know what condition they're in. And Bob Ferguson and Nick Brown released them. What for? What benefit does this guy have for society that he gets the get out of jail free card again and again and again and again? Then you should be asking yourself why the mainstream media isn't reporting on this. It's not because there's a giant flood today. I see plenty of other stories on their websites. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Dave in Puyallup. Dave, what's up, man?
Ari, I want to make a quick statement here. First of all, there's 85% of the population is in 39 major cities across the United States. 85%, okay? It doesn't take 2,000 terrorists to go through and do what they did October 7th. And the people need to wake up, because the reality of it is, if they decide to really take our population down, they can do it all within about a 2-day span. Kill our grid, then throw the major bombs in 39 major cities, and it'd be over.
We're lucky that the terrorists are not more inventive. We're lucky they're not more inventive, because it's absolutely horrifying the kind of damage they could do if they wanted to.
See, the problem is we haven't seen it in our own country yet for what, 200 years, 225 years, because we're celebrating the 250-year anniversary. But when it comes down to us, I don't think it's going to make a difference whether you're Democrat or Republican, because everybody will be in survival mode.
Right. They don't care. They don't care at all. They really just don't. Appreciate the call, Dave. Yeah. Appreciate the very, very scary warning. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. We go back to the Warrior Injury Law studio line. Take a call from Leonard in Shoreline. Leonard, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm also going to make this quick. You know, the illegal immigrant from Mexico who caused an accident with that car hauler, I'll bet you 10-to-1 odds when the police went to ask for his Social Security number, he probably said, I don't have one.
Well, they asked for his driver's license there, Leonard, and he didn't have one of those either, and he was driving an 18-wheeler with cars on the back of it. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. Got this text over here from Jason and Lacey. How can we find out if someone is an illegal immigrant? Well, It's a little complicated, but I'll tell you what you can do. If you have concerns about if somebody's an illegal immigrant who's a criminal, and you have some story like that, email it to me, ari@kvi.com. That's ari@kvi.com. And don't go sending me every crime you see. A lot of times the name is there, guys, and you can tell whether there's an issue or not. But if you see some story like that, you want me to check it out for you, I'll check it out with DHS and ICE. You give us an email, ari@kvi.com. That's ari@kvi.com. And don't forget, this story that we just had the exclusive on, that came from one of our listeners. One of our listeners is the one that said, hey, Ari, I see this guy was arrested over on I-5 in Lacey. Do you know anything about it? We just thought it was an accident involving a truck. And look how far down the rabbit hole this went. And the lamestream media covered it as an accident. And they left out the rest of this. KVI Nation, you are the absolute best when it comes to this kind of stuff. When we come back, my friends, there's a trial that is starting in Seattle that the lamestream media is ignoring involving the deadly autonomous zone. We'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. There's a trial underway, which just started yesterday here in Seattle. I don't think anybody's covering this at all. I have seen zero coverage from any of the lamestream media outlets because it seems like everybody's trying to make 2020 get swept under the rug. You notice that all the COVID cases are just being dismissed. You notice that a whole bunch of judges won't even take them. Everybody's trying to, no, we didn't do that whole riots thing. Forget about that. Pay no attention to it whatsoever. Well, there was the deadly Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, where BLM and Antifa terrorists took over 6 blocks of our city. We know that 6 people were shot, 2 people were died. There were rapes, there were robberies, there were murders, you name it. There were assaults. There was a warlord of the Autonomous Zone walking around handing out AR-15s out of the trunk of his Tesla. Well, Katie Davenport is in the courtroom covering this trial, which nobody else is doing. It's crazy to me that nobody's paying attention to this thing that was monumental. I still have people on the East Coast going, is that Autonomous Zone still a thing in Seattle? It's been 5 years. 5 years. According to Katie Davenport, in a courtroom heavy with grief, the high-profile civil jury trial pitting the family of murdered teenager Antonio Mays Jr. against the city of Seattle commenced on Wednesday in King County Superior Court. This case is centered around the tragic death of Antonio Mays Jr., a black 16-year-old from California who was shot dead in the deadly 2020 Antifa BLM Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, also known as CHAZ or CHOP. I don't call it CHOP. That was even stupider than CHAZ. The Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone or the Capitol Hill Occupied Protest, because the lunatics realized we're all making fun of it when they started calling it CHAZ. In the summer of 2020, following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Antifa and BLM militants cordoned off a 6-block area in downtown Seattle after the Seattle Police Department abandoned a police precinct under the order of Carmen Best and Mayor Jenny Durkin. They declared themselves autonomous, but then said, hey, can you bring us porta potties? Hey, can you bring us everything we need? Can you bring us hygiene stations? Yeah, you're really autonomous. Then Mayor Jenny Durkin called it the Summer of Love. When her leadership was questioned over the occupation, orders were given for Seattle police to abandon a precinct house in the zone, and the city aided the erection of barriers around the area. Oh, yeah, by the way, they spent $1 million putting those things up and taking them down, leaving those within the zone to fend for themselves. The wrongful death lawsuit accuses the city of negligence for abandoning the Seattle Police East Precinct to protesters, supplying the barricades that fortified the 6-block war zone, prohibiting police and emergency responders from entering the area, effectively creating a state-created danger that enabled violence, resulting in the teenager's death. Before Judge Timothy O'Donnell, attorneys laid out starkly contrasting narratives about the deadly CHAZ CHOP zone. The 15 jurors will determine if the city is liable for Antonio's death. Antonio Mays Sr., the victim's father, entered the courtroom stone-faced, clutching a framed portrait of his son, whom he raised as a single father. He pulled his family out of homelessness through running a barbecue sauce business. In opening statements, attorney Evan O'Shan, representing the Mays family, told the jury that Antonio Mays Jr. traveled to Seattle from California to join the civil rights movement of his generation. The CHAZ CHOP was formed in response to the death of George Floyd, a black man who died in Minneapolis police custody, which sparked nationwide anti-police, racial justice protests, and riots across the U.S. What drew him, O'Shan argued, was the innocent portrayal by then-Mayor Jenny Durkin, a Democrat who dubbed the zone a block party, Summer of Love, a street festival. He left a note for his father announcing his departure, saying he felt led by God. But upon arrival, Antonio did not walk into what was being portrayed on television. Instead, he entered a large militarized barricade controlled by armed protesters, many of whom belonged to Antifa, their organization's security arm known as the John Brown Gun Club, who patrolled the barricades with rifles while Seattle police officers were ordered to stand down. Yeah, this all actually happened. I saw it with my own 2 eyes, by the way. Antonio had no prior history of protesting. Due to his young age, was unaware of the danger element. O'Shan promised the jury that the evidence presented at trial would show the city not only barred SPD and Seattle Fire from entry, but actively aided in the zone's creation. You want me to prove this right now? Harold Scoggins, still our fire chief. Socialist Seattle Mayor-elect Katie Wilson says she's going to keep him as the fire chief, even though this guy ordered Seattle firefighters to give their gear to the rioters, coordinated with them on barricade placement, then deleted his text messages about it. Tragedy struck on June 29, 2020, around 3 a.m., just days after a fatal mass shooting rocked CHAZ. Antonio and his 14-year-old friend, Robert West, were driving through the zone when CHAZ security protesters, acting as self-appointed guards, unleashed a hail of gunfire. Video footage captured the chaos, which included roughly 100 rounds of ammunition fired and protesters scrambling to collect the spent shell casings while shouting, "Hell yeah, no evidence." Antonio was struck at least 8 times, while West miraculously survived a gunshot wound to the head. Good Samaritans among the protesters dialed 911, but no sirens arrived on the scene. O'Shan told the court that SPD had abandoned active shooter protocols, citing city directives. Bystanders loaded the wounded teens into the vehicles. CHAZ warlord Raz Simone, a rapper and self-proclaimed security head, later filmed distributing firearms to minors inside the zone, transported west to the hospital. The others transporting Antonio attempted to approach a Seattle fire ambulance, but the first responders fled, probably because they thought they were coming to kill them. A 911 dispatcher urged for Antonio to be sent to a city-designated staging area at 14th and Union. Oh, yeah, those were set up between the city and the Antifa types. However, there was a dispatch error that labeled the designated area scene of violence, prompting medics to scatter upon the victim's arrival. He asserted that Antonio endured 25 minutes of agonizing pain before succumbing to injuries. Quote, the city of Seattle abandoned everybody, not just Antonio Jr., but Seattle PD, Seattle Fire, and all the citizens of Seattle, O'Shan said. Jurors will view harrowing video of his final moments, he said, alongside audio of frustrated officers begging to intervene. You'll hear the frustration from SPD officers who couldn't help. Attorney Alexandra Nika, representing the city of Seattle, claimed that the vehicle he had been driving that night was stolen. Therefore, he was allegedly committing a felony at the time of his death. She said the sole responsibility for Antonio's death lies with the shooters, telling the court it is not the city that pulled the trigger. A suspect or suspects have not yet been apprehended in this case. Antonio's death resulted in the city dismantling the zone 2 days later. Now, we have theories on who these shooters are, and in fact, I'm 90% sure it is, but nobody investigated it. Nobody investigated our findings. I turned them over to the FBI at the time. I turned them over to Seattle police at the time. I think I had this guy dead to rights. Ironically, the guy who I think did it is in federal prison in Florida for another crime. I wonder why nobody's investigated this. Because it seems like the city just wants to swipe the whole thing under the rug. Just get rid of the whole thing. Doesn't want to talk about it at all. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from our frenemy, Bennett the protester. Bennett, have you been in Portland or something? Haven't heard from you in a while.
Oh, been a little busy, but I hope you missed me. A little bit of a topic switch. I wanted to go back to one of the Let's Go Washington signing where there was a group of us protesting outside, and I actually got into a conversation with, I was there outside with my sign, and there was somebody's kid. I later found out he was about 11, and he came up and he had a sign too, and so he came up and started talking to me, and so I said, okay, this is okay. And my sign was about how, sort of arguing the minors' rights position that, if you're a teenager and you want to get a vaccine from your doctor and your doctor approves it, that you should be able to get that. It's not exactly what the Let's Go Washington initiatives were about, but sort of on the topic of the general principle of being able to have, medical confidentiality and autonomy to make those decisions with your doctors. Okay. So, and he looked at me and he said, okay, well, don't you think that, shouldn't your parents have the right to decide that before you're 18? And I said, well, you're just sort of describing what the rule is. It's not really making an argument for why the rule should be that way.
Whoa. Hang on. I got to stop you right there for a second. Okay. So an 11-year-old, number one, I'm not going to go based on the discussion with 11-year-old, but even in Washington, the youngest age you can make these decisions at is 13. But let me ask you this, Bennett. If you're getting bad medical advice, shouldn't somebody be around to protect you from that? Can you prove to me, can you send me one study that shows that the suicide rates go down after these gender-altering surgeries that can scar you for life and are irreversible?
Well, I understand that there were several things that the Let's Go Washington initiatives were talking about. I'm specifically talking about the vaccine issue because I think the medical evidence there is more
wait a second. The vaccine issue is not – the vaccine issue is not part of Let's Go Washington. Let's Go Washington's initiatives are very, very simple. Do parents have the right to know what their kids are doing in school, what they're being told in school, what teachers are saying to them in school? That's number one. And the other one is, should boys be allowed to play in girls' sports? That's it. Anything else related to this is not actually in the text of these things, Bennett.
Right. Well, the reason I was bringing up the vaccines is I wanted to sort of anchor it in more general principles beyond just what the initiatives were about. Like, if you can accept that can we agree about whether teenagers should have the right to be able to get vaccines for their doctors over a certain age, and that based on the pros and cons of that decision. And then if you accept that, then how much does that logic also apply to pros and cons of other things? But the reason I want to bring up the discussion with the 11-year-old is because I think it was very interesting that you don't usually get to have those discussions discussions with people based on pure logic as adults. And the interesting thing was that here's the thing. He was coming at it from that point in discussing things in terms of pure logic because that's his default setting. In my case, at my age, I'm aware that that's not how people usually discuss those things, but I'm sort of pushing back against that rule. I think we should still discuss it in terms of those.
Oh, I get it. But Bennett,
logical principles and reasoning through them.
That's why we have you on the show to have these discussions. Got to run though, buddy. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. And speaking of healthcare, when we come back, Democrats broke our entire health insurance system and are now asking you to pay for fixing it and not even fix it well. We'll give you the details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. I can already see what's going to happen. Democrats are going to blame Republicans for the fact that everybody's health insurance is going to go up. Republicans are going to blame Democrats. And the truth is, everybody just wants the issue. Nobody wants to actually fix this. When Democrats passed Obamacare, it was a disaster. I'll remind you, the lie of the year was if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. None of it was true. Costs skyrocketed, and everybody gets lousier insurance. So the Obamacare subsidies is funding by the government, by you, to cover these problems with Obamacare. It's a flawed system. If it was supposed to make things cheaper, why does the government have to pay more and more and more and more? So now they're looking for a bailout. It's funny to me the Democrats who hate bailouts of big corporations are now looking for a bailout for a failed government program. Let's not forget who passed Obamacare, shall we?
As for the subsidies that are set to expire, I would like to remind you and everybody at home why this is on the brink of happening. Democrats wrote Obamacare. They passed it without a single Republican vote, and then they ballooned it with these expensive COVID subsidies that completely distorted the health insurance market. And then they doubled down, extending those subsidies and setting their own expiration date right now in 2025, which the administration is obviously well aware of, and we are working, the president is working with his healthcare policy team here at the White House, as well as Republicans on Capitol Hill, to find a solution.
The problem is you're under the gun because everybody's going home for the holidays and these things expire at the start of the year. So people are talking about bridge loans. Can you really fix this failed system in a week? You're really talking about a week, right? You get, 2 weeks, let's say. This week, next week, then everybody's out of there till the first of the year. Does anybody actually want to solve this? I know Chuck Schumer is ranting and railing, but press secretary summed it up really well right now.
Again, I have told you now a few times that the president and the Republicans will continue to unveil creative ideas and solutions to the healthcare crisis that was created by Democrats. And I know Chuck Schumer is putting up a vote today. This is a political show vote. Chuck Schumer is not sincerely interested in lowering healthcare costs for the American people. He's putting this vote on the floor knowing that it will fail so he can have another talking point that he can throw around without any real plan or action. If Chuck Schumer actually wanted to lower healthcare costs, I'm sure the president would welcome him and his entire Democrat caucus to a legitimate coordination on the president's policies of bringing down drug prices, these most favored nation deals. Why hasn't Chuck Schumer ever come out in support of those? Those are going to legitimately, they already are, lower drug prices for the American people. And not a word from Chuck Schumer on it. So I think that just proves this is completely political.
Exactly. Don't take her word for it, by the way. Here's Bernie Sanders.
The truth of the matter is, before the big, beautiful bill, our healthcare system was a disaster. It is dysfunctional. And the American people and Democrats have got to deal with the fact.
Exactly. Obamacare is a mess. It's always been a mess. It never should have been passed. It's an absolute disaster. When we come back, more of your calls, more of your texts, my friend, but also Seattle schools are surveying teens on sex and gender and then sharing the results. Yeah, confidential, my you-know-what. Tell you all about it when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, so that you don't miss a minute of the show, download the KVI app and subscribe to the Ari Hoffman Show on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. That way, you never miss a minute, even when you're traveling for the holidays. Looks like we got some breaking news for you right now, courtesy of KVI Nation.
Talk Radio 570 KVI. Breaking news on the Ari Hoffman Show.
There was a crash earlier this morning near the SR-18 interchange in Auburn. The crash involved 3 vehicles. A semi-truck apparently rear-ended a car, pushing it into another truck. The driver of the car that was pushed into a truck was killed, and now we have the news that the truck driver who caused the accident was arrested for vehicular homicide. You don't normally get arrested for vehicular homicide if you're doing everything A-OK and somebody swerves in front of you. So the question is this yet another example of the stories we've been talking about? We don't have the driver's information yet. As soon as we have the driver's information, you bet we will be finding out the immigration status of this driver, the CDL status of this driver. We'll be finding out all the circumstances. As soon as we have that information, we will bring it to you here on the show. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Ben in SeaTac. Ben, what's going on?
Hey, Ari, I spoke with you a couple of weeks ago about how the Democrats are attacking our ranchers and our farmers, and then how they're trying to, under Biden. I hope you read the articles.
I read the articles. I sent out a few requests for comment based on them, as a matter of fact. I didn't blow you off. Did I blow you off? I didn't mean to blow you off. I sent out a few requests for comment. I don't have the information I need to pursue that because I actually reached out to the Department of Agriculture in both the state here and in the feds, and nobody's gone back to me. Now, that means one of two things. Either it was affected by the government shutdown, because I remember when you reached out and they're still coming out from under the backlog of that, or alternatively, they don't want to answer what's going on.
Well, you don't want to answer because under Joe Biden, the BLM was trying to deny grazing lands to pretty much every rancher they could in the western U.S. And here in the Washington State, I'm sure you heard about the feds going to start pulling a lot of more federal funds from Washington State. Washington State Department of Ecology has basically declared war on our farmers and ranchers here. And did you hear about that?
Yeah. So I read the articles you gave me, and I went down the rabbit hole. I'm sorry if I didn't get back to you. Okay, I really went down the rabbit hole on that one. Maybe that's why I didn't get back to you. I got so distracted by this because I had to learn about farming. This is not something I know. I'm a city boy. So I had to go check all that out, and then I started reaching out for comment, and I haven't gotten what I need from them yet. So what this means is I had to start filing public disclosure requests, and those take even longer.
Well, they're going to drag their feet because, see, this is the whole thing, this affordability and all that. Well, yeah, the food's gone up. Well, guess what? Supply and demand. The Democrats tighten the supply.
Why don't you do me a favor? Stop for a second. I want you to summarize, basically, in 2 sentences for the audience, exactly what's going on here, because you're clearly passionate about this. And I want you to tell the audience. Give them 2 sentences on what's happening.
Net zero agenda means less of everything. Food, red meat, farming, energy. That's what this is all about.
Right. So what they're doing is they're putting a whole bunch of restrictions on you guys, which is making things more expensive because the harder they make it for you guys to do your jobs, the more expensive it becomes. And as a result, what's happening now is the feds are saying, if you don't cut this stuff out, we're going to cut off your funding for your little department, and they're fighting it out. Is that an accurate summary of what's going on?
Right now, yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. And the problem is, I don't think anybody wants to talk about it. Now, I'm kind of surprised the feds haven't gotten back to me on this yet. But you know what? I'm making a note right now. I'm going to reach out to them and ping them again because now that the shutdown's over, perhaps they're getting back to people because it took them a while to get back to some of my ICE cases, too. So I'm going to ping the Department of Agriculture on what's going on in Washington, and hopefully somebody gets back to me, all right?
Sounds great.
All right. We don't want our food to cost more money. We know what's going on. I mean, the Climate Commitment Act alone caused all kind of problems. This is just another layer of that. And it just seems like they don't know where their food comes from. Would that be about right?
Yeah, they're attacking the source, and it's all for net zero fanaticism is what this is all about. I mean, that's why the blue states, we have to separate the blue states from the red states in the economic development because the whole West Coast is suffering because of Democrat policies. Oregon, California. I mean, I could stay here 5 minutes to all the things that are going on
Basically, it
was
comes
San
down to
Francisco.
it's their climate change insanity is basically what this comes down to. The farting cows insanity. All the stuff they want to do with the Climate Commitment Act. It's all that wrapped together in one big garbage bow, which is causing all these problems and spiking prices. Ben, I'll get back to you as soon as they get back to me. I've got your email sitting in my inbox. I appreciate it, all right?
Sounds great. Thanks, Ari.
All right, take care, man. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you staying on top of this. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. This is something that we've been following for a little while. I need to figure out what exactly is going on with the feds. I'll check in with them today and see if this is going to continue being a problem, because if so, this is one of the reasons why grocery prices have not come down yet. Also, I want to thank the various people that called the show to tell us about this latest trucking incident. As soon as we have the information on the driver, we'll do a full investigation, see if this person was in the country legally or illegally, and if any detainers are going to be filed with regards to it. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, we are going to have updates for you on the flooding in our state. It's really out of control. Are the feds going to come in and help out Ferguson with emergency funding or not? We'll give you the latest details on that. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Glenn Morgan's going to be joining us this hour. Talk about what the state doesn't want you to know about voter fraud here. But before we get to any of that, holy cow, those floodwaters. I don't think I realized how bad it was until a relative of mine sent me a video yesterday of a property they have out in Nachos, Washington, where the river there, which is, it's a river, but it's more of a brook than a river, looks like you could take a canoe or anything whitewater rafting down that thing, like a real raft. I have never seen it. I've been out to this property before. It's amazing property, but that river is ridiculously high. It's starting to flood the cabins on the property. We have multiple evacuation orders, and guys, don't be heroes. If you're under evacuation order, get out now. It's not worth it. It's just not. Stuff can be replaced. Yesterday, Governor Bob Ferguson held a press briefing announcing he has requested disaster declaration from the Federal Emergency Management Agency to address widespread flooding across western Washington after several days of near-record rainfall. According to the Center Square, even as the governor spoke, several flood-prone communities were in the midst of evacuating residents and issuing emergency alerts to prepare for departure. Ferguson said, "We need the federal government to grant that request. This is critical," he said from Camp Murray. He said, if you receive an evacuation order, please follow that order. Now, I'm not saying the federal government shouldn't help out, but the reason Ferguson wants the federal government to help out is really because he had to deploy the National Guard and he doesn't know how to pay for it. Really, that's a serious component of this. He already has a massive budget crunch. He doesn't know how to pay for it. So you know what's going to happen in this budget cycle? They're going to be talking about, the floodwaters because of climate change. So we need to tax you more money because of the floodwaters because we literally don't have a rainy day fund here in the state anymore. So we're asking for the feds to bail them out. Yes, your governor and his buddies decided it was a smarter move to hire 700 attorneys for the Attorney General's office rather than actually keeping money away for literally a rainy day. We don't have a rainy day fund anymore, specifically for things like this. How is it that Ron DeSantis, when there's a hurricane that hits Florida, he goes, we don't need help from the federal government. We don't need anything from the federal government. We're just fine. They have record budget revenue. They have record revenue. And yet we're losing it. We're losing more and more money because of our bad fiscal policies. Now, coming up at around 4:35, Jeff Pogula from Northwest News Radio is going to be joining us to give us all the latest details on the flood, on the damage, and especially where we're going to have some problems with dams, and that's why there's evacuation orders. But you have a 127-year-old dam. Who knows if anybody's actually been doing the maintenance on it? Anytime they say infrastructure, I never see them actually doing any work on the infrastructure. How many of our bridges are beyond their service life? And all that money for roads and bridges was never, ever spent. I feel like a broken record because this is always what happens every single time. Make no mistake about it. Washington could probably handle this ourselves, and the reason we're asking for the feds is because Fergie, wants that money. That's why. He wants the money because he cannot pay for this. Why did he bring out the National Guard to bring in gas shipments to SeaTac Airport when there was the pipeline issue? Instead, what did he decide to do? We're going to loosen the restrictions on hours of truck drivers so they can get this done. Yeah, I truly believe this is a money issue. I really do. If you need federal resources, then ask for federal resources. Which specific federal resources do you want? And let's bring them on in. I'm not saying this isn't an emergency. I'm not saying that. But I'm kind of wondering why Washington needs the federal government and Florida doesn't. You know, when you have tons of people moving to your state and you have record revenues, guess what you don't need? Federal money, because you've got enough money of your own. Ferguson can't afford this. And it comes at the absolute worst time for him right before a legislative session. I'm sorry that I'm so cynical and so jaded, but I really believe it's all about the money at this point. I really, really do. I'm sorry about that, but I really believe it's about the money. Look, I know there are other things that happen. For example, when places get declared disaster areas, you could do stuff with the insurance. I get all that, and I think all that needs to happen. But pardon me for being jaded and cynical about Bob Ferguson finally calling out the National Guard. There have been other times he should have called out the National Guard and didn't. And my speculation at those times was it was a money issue. Oh, by the way, he's about to have more money issues. You know how we told you that Microsoft might be leaving town? Headline from Breitbart, Microsoft has announced plans to invest $17.5 billion in India over the next 4 years, focusing on the country's rapidly growing data center market. Meanwhile, in the United States, the software giant is laying off Americans, importing H-1B visa workers, and cozying up to the Chinese government. Why do you think all that is? This is crazy. Nikkei Asia reports that Microsoft has decided to invest $17.5 billion in India over the next 4 years, joining the ranks of tech giants including Google and Amazon Web Services, and tapping into the country's booming data center markets. You know why else they're investing in India? I'll tell you why. When I ran my bounce house company, I didn't have a call service center. I had one guy in the Philippines. Yes, there are companies that do this. One guy in the Philippines. That became a disaster one time. There was one guy in the Philippines, and there was some kind of natural disaster there, and he couldn't work for a few days. But I had one guy in the Philippines. It was a fraction of the price. When that guy asked for a raise, no problem. Here's the raise you could have instead of a giant call center. The announcement comes as India experiences a surge in demand for data centers driven by factors such as increasing adoption of cloud computing, the growth of e-commerce, and the government's push for digitization. Yeah, it's more than that. Do you know what it is? It's the fact that labor is cheap over there. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi on December 9th to discuss the company's investment plans. A substantial investment is expected to boost India's digital infrastructure and contribute to the country's economic growth. It also underscores the importance of India as a key market for global technology companies. Yeah, when you charge too much money, you've got the Laffer curve. And what happens is eventually people are going to go somewhere else. So when you start taxing jobs as much as Democrats are, you get these problems. The data center market in India has been attracting significant attention from U.S. tech giants due to the country's low costs and the increasing demand for AI and cloud computing services. Google, Amazon Web Services have already announced their plans to invest in India's data center infrastructure, recognizing the immense potential for growth in the country. Jobs getting shipped overseas. Great stuff. Breitbart News reported in July that the company is laying off 9,000 Americans, even as it brings in 6,000 H-1B visa workers likely to come from India. So the tech companies don't want to play ball with the Trump administration. Is that what's going on? They want the production being done elsewhere. The politicians who are responsible for this, by the way, keep running for higher and higher office. So you remember who co-sponsored the legislation that's been pre-filed with the Washington State Legislature to start taxing everybody up the wazoo? Who says, well, we just need them to pay their fair share. Let me ask any liberal this question. Any of you can call the show. What exactly is the number attached to fair share? What's the number? What do you think a fair share is? Now, Democrats are for sure going to do an income tax, and they think they're going to be able to get away with it this time because they know they have the Supreme Court. Democrats are for sure going to be pushing this. So you had Sean Scott, the socialist/communist from Seattle, and Rebecca Saldana, the other socialist from Seattle. They're the two who are pushing this. Well, Rebecca Saldana says she's not running for another term in the Washington State Senate. Why? Because she's running for King County Council. She's running to replace Gurmeet Zahale, who's now the King County Executive. You see how the dominoes just go? The dominoes! It's the dominoes! Then she can become King County Executive. Then she can become Attorney General. Then she can become Governor. You see how everybody just kind of knows their place and knows where they're going in line? This is how it goes. Rebecca Saldana. Not only does she have bad fiscal policy, she was the head of Transportation Committee, and during a meeting of the committee, she is driving around on Zoom from her car, juggling her phone, and she put on a fake backdrop. This was during COVID, but you could see the steering wheel, and you could see her head going all the different directions. Gee, I wonder what you're doing right now. Would we consider that distracted driving? I believe so. She's head of the Transportation Committee. But also, she's got some pretty bad judgment. Not just fiscal policy, not just with regard to transportation, but she also endorses some absolutely crazy people. So, do you remember Uba Gardir? Ah, yes, Uba Gardir. Uba Gardir, ironically, ran for King County Council and lost because of this show. Why did she lose? Uba Gardir was running for King County Council. She's a Somali immigrant. She was running for King County Council back in 2021. Now, this is media malpractice at its worst. What do I do when I'm researching candidates? I research candidates. The first thing I do, I go to Google. And I say, what do we got on this person? What's the first thing that pops up? This woman's name attached to a 2010 incident where she walked onto a school bus filled with children and threatened to blow it up. And I said, excuse me, what? Nobody. Como, Cairo, Fox 13, I think it was Q13 at the time, King 5, Seattle Times, they're all talking about her like she's a regular candidate. None of you Googled this? No, it's easier to just go to the person's website. Wait a second, if you have to find their website, that means you have to Google them. That means you scrolled past the bus bombing stuff? So what did I do? I filed a public disclosure request. I want the video from the bus that was involved in the trial. I want to see it. And they wouldn't turn it over. So I decided to get a little nasty. And I said, okay, who do I sue for election interference? That was literally what I said. Magically, wouldn't you know, a couple days later, I had a DVD of the footage. Mike, you know how hard it was to find a DVD player back in 2021? There weren't that many around, and one that I could use for a computer to transfer it over. Yeah, I could find a DVD player, but it wasn't wired to, be recorded over. That was a bit of a to-do. Anyway, found my old laptop, found it, and then we got this little gem of a video.
Excuse me?
Sure.
You can't drive, you can't leave. Really, you're going to be careful. Yeah.
No!
She gets on the bus, tells the driver he can't leave.
How do you know? I'm Muslim, I'm covered, I might have a bomb. So you
Run. I might have a bomb, I might have a gun. So the kids open the door and start running off the bus.
Hey! Someone better get here real quick.
Calling the kids cowards as they run off the bus from the lady with the bomb.
I don't care what you want. I'm going to tell you right
Police are now on the
children
bus.
on the bus, and I'm going to ask you to get off the bus right now. I'm going to ask you once, and then I'm going to take you off the bus. If you choose not to get off the bus, I'm going to drop you right here as we stand. Do you understand that? Okay, then what I would do is back up off this bus right now. Turn around, face away from me. All right, start backing up. Start backing up. I'm only going to tell you once.
I'm prepared to die. Oh, the two best quotes in that entire video. Oh, hell no, and I'm prepared to die. Yes, the Democrats nominated this person to run for King County Council. Nobody will ever find that video. One Google search. One Google search. Do you know who convinced this person to run for office? State Senator Rebecca Saldana. Do you know who endorsed this person for office? State Senator Rebecca Saldana. Do you know that Rebecca Saldana, after that video, went mega viral? Because it did. Mega viral. In fact, anytime I post that video, it goes viral again. Anytime. So, what happened? Just a week or two later, after everybody already knew all this and they started doing the apology tour in all the magazines, oh, she didn't actually have a bomb. She was having a mental health crisis. We feel so bad for her. Rebecca Saldana still threw a fundraiser for her. Usually that's when politicians go, nope, I'm out of here. It's been nice. Keep my name on your website or take my name off your website. I'm done. She showed up to run fundraisers and campaign events for her. If Rebecca Saldana had said, nope, bye-bye, I'm out of here, we would have had a little bit more respect for her. But no, instead she says, this is the person I'm going with. This is going to be great. This is fantastic. Oh, yeah, Rebecca Saldana, by the way, That's not her only bad judgment. Despite a $17 billion budget deficit that the Democrats claimed last year, she's the one who proposed unemployment insurance for illegal immigrants that was going to cost $100 million for only 2 years. That was her big pitch. That's what she wanted to do. And now she's running for King County Council. And you know the crazy thing is? The majority of people here in King County are probably dumb enough to vote for her because they were dumb enough to put her in the Senate in the first place. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line. Take call from Paul in Bonnie Lake. Paul, what's up?
Yeah, you mentioned Nazis earlier. I just saw in Central Washington, the river over there, so it drives me crazy. I pronounce Nazis, but I want to leave you with this. What's it going to take to have Pam Bondi and company come in and do an audit of every department in the state of Washington?
Well, hang on a second here. I don't understand the hate against Pam Bondi with regard to Washington because right now, and in fact, we're having Glenn Morgan on the show in about half an hour to talk about the fact that the feds are literally trying to get our voter rolls and Washington's resisting them. On top of that, we are having Harmeet Dillon on the show, I think, Monday from the Department of Justice, and they're coming in to go after all the civil rights violations. They're going after these things one by one by one. I think the problem is that a lot of people think that the federal government can be everywhere at once. I am very curious, and maybe I'll do some Googling of this to find out how many lawyers the federal government has and how many of these different states do, because you can only be in so many places at one time. And Bob Ferguson's office has over 800 lawyers for the Attorney General's office. There's only so many of these cases they can take on. I don't know how many lawyers work for the federal government, but we know they're going in those directions. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of things I wish they would. But to say they're not doing anything, that just ain't true.
Right. No, I'd love to see that. I mean, when Dino Rossi ran against Gregoire, I mean, they couldn't find enough ballots for Gregoire.
Yeah, I remember all that fun. I'm not disagreeing with you that there's issues here, Paul. I'm really not. But what I am saying is that they are trying to get those voter rolls. In fact, Glenn Morgan's going to tell us exactly what they could do with the voter rolls when we talk to him later. So I know it's frustrating how slow these things move, but have a little bit of faith. Appreciate the pronunciation correction. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. In fact, when we come back, my friends, let's find out what's going on with those voter rolls. Let's see what's happening. Let's see what the federal government can actually do to fix what's going on here in Washington. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. With the Department of Justice finally looking into our electoral system here in Washington and our voter rolls, there's one man who's been working on this longer than the rest of us, joining us now in studio from We the Governed, the one and only Glenn Morgan. How you doing today, buddy?
Doing well, Ari. Thank you so much for having me here, and I was glad I was able to stop by in Seattle and just say hi while I was in town.
Brave Seattle while you're here. I hope your car is still downstairs. Or I should say, I hope your windows are still intact when you go downstairs.
We'll see. Mine's the worst one on the block. That's always my theory, is if you park the junker, you're probably the last one to be broken into.
You're okay. All right, so Glenn, we know that Harmy Dillon, and we know that the Department of Justice is gearing up to take on Steve Hobbs.
Yep.
Now, Steve Hobbs is refusing to play ball, which for me, I would say, dude, if you think we have the most secure voting system ever, then just turn it over and prove it and say, I told you so, I told you so.
Right.
Now, if he actually does that, I'm worried about what games they might be playing over there.
Well, that's a good question, and this is the thing that we've been worried. It's not that we're worried about it. We know they're going to do this, right? So, and here's the games the Department of Justice should be aware of, because this is probably they're already doing prep at the Secretary of State's office on this. Number one, what they're going to do is take the shadier portion of the voter rolls and just drop them into what they call inactive voters. And then they won't provide the inactive voter list to the Department of Justice just to keep it off the record.
So even if somebody voted last year or in the last election,
right,
they'll say they're inactive. I don't know what you're talking about, even if it's shady.
That's right.
But wait a second. Doesn't that show they have a system of knowing who's shady and who's not shady? See, wouldn't it be better if they just said, okay, here's everybody we didn't know, but you're saying is they're actively tracking that, which means they know.
Right. They definitely know that. And we found this when we were actually doorbelling homes of people who had voted. And they clearly, when you went to the house, you found out they didn't exist. They hadn't been there in 15 years. People who lived there had never heard of those other 6 people at that address. Then you would go in and you would file, there's an official process. You file it with the auditor and you say, I'm going to challenge these voters. And they'd say, oh, well, we already put them in the inactive voter list. And they would kill it before you went any further. And that's how we know that this is one of the games they're going to be playing. And I've done some videos. I've talked about a few of these things. But this is something. I just want to have it out in the open so that Harmy knows this is exactly one. Now, that's just one of the games they're going to play.
So Harmy Dillon is actually going to be joining us on the show on Monday. We're very excited that she's going to be joining us and we get to talk about all this. And I'm very curious what's going on outside of Seattle, because we like to think like all the problems are here. We know they're in Olympia too, but I think there's a lot of counties that have these things going on. Is there anybody who's actually would you say is secure in a certain county?
Some of the smaller counties where there's only a couple thousand voters, which actually we have a number of them, especially in eastern Washington, you're probably the question of security is a different question, right? So is it fairly accurate to what the people are voting for in those counties, or is it harder to actually do something shady in those counties? The answer is yes, it's harder in those counties.
Yeah.
And they don't need to, right? It's much easier if you're going to have shady voter rolls or fluffy voter rolls to do it in a big county like King County or like Spokane, and where places where those elections are going to have direct consequences on policies that special interests are going to care about.
Yeah, so then the question is, does voter ID even solve this problem? Because then, let's say we get the voter ID thing.
Right.
They'll just move them to inactive whenever anybody comes looking for them. Isn't that a way of subverting the system?
It is, and that's one of our concerns. This focus on voter rolls is appropriate, and it is one of the key focuses that exists. Goes back to Tammany Hall days, right? This is as soon as people started having elections, this was one of the ways that you could manipulate election results. And we've seen this in other countries, and for some reason people want to pretend like there's no way it could possibly happen here. But that's the easiest way to manipulate it. Now, what we have in our state is an additional complication, which is the challenge with all mail-in voting, because there's no chain of custody as to what's happening with the ballots or how many of them are coming in. And once they separate them from the envelope, there's no way to actually tell if that really was the ballot that was originally in the envelope. We've got all these issues that we've been focused on. But ultimately, you can count everything perfectly. It doesn't matter. You could have Jesus and 12 saints working in the auditor's office, and you could still have defective election results if the voter rolls are stuffed or if there's a lack of chain of custody is what happens with the ballots, which is why we have been so focused on that aspect of it. And honestly, people should realize this is a big deal. First time in state history anybody's actually looked at our voter rolls like this. It's never been done before. And the excuse and the attitude and the behavior that you see out of Steve Hobbs' office or the Democrat Party in general right now is identical to what the attitude and behavior that they had in the Jim Crow South. It's identical. In fact, there's no difference at all.
But I thought we're the racists. I thought we're the ones who want to bring back Jim Crow, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is the thing. The party of Jim Crow now and the games that they played in the Reconstruction South all the way up till the 60s with manipulating voter rolls, it's the same game that you see being operated here in our state and other states. We're not alone. There's plenty, 14 states. I bet there's going to be closer to about 20 of them when they look at them thoroughly. But even the states that care, that are trying to do the right thing, even in those states, they've been finding all kinds of problems, as I'm sure Harmeet's going to talk about. Because some states do care. They are trying to work with them. And I've heard from election directors in some of these states that do a good job. They're finding non-U.S. citizens in the voter rolls there. Now, not to the same numbers that we will here, and not because of policy, but just because their system needs a lot more oversight. And the problems that we've done is we've created a system that's not transparent, not auditable. And those of us who dare to question this are attacked and threatened at every turn for just even daring to question the narrative.
In the last few minutes we have with Glenn Morgan from We the Governed. Glenn, you drive all over the state. You know traffic patterns probably better than most. Have you noticed that traffic's been getting lighter around here? Do you think that might be because there's less people on the roads? Do you think this problem will just sort itself out naturally or by some ICE intervention?
Well, it all depends. I mean, I am assuming that when you start to deport illegals or when you also drive businesses out of the state, you will reduce the traffic that's actually there. And, I'm sure that isn't their main.
Laugh.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a sick laughter that we have here. But yes, I have seen that in some places. That being said, with all the water and the rain and the flooding that's been in the news lately, probably some people are staying home because of that. At least that's what I saw today.
Glenn Morgan with We the Governed. Make sure you check him out, especially on YouTube. Subscribe to his channel because he is one of my very best sources and should be one of yours on the insanity happening here in Washington. Glenn, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, so you never miss a minute of the show, or in case, God forbid, you have to evacuate, make sure you download the KVI app, so that way you can take us with you on the go. Joining us now in studio, the senior political reporter for Northwest News Radio. Our sister station over here is Jeff Pogula, who has been absolutely swamped, or you might say flooded, with news going on around here.
Well done. Although it is a serious conversation, not political for one time that I'm coming in to talk to you, but there's a little bit of it involved. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Yeah. But yes, the flooding continues across western Washington. This after the twin, as the TV meteorologists like to call it, atmospheric rivers that came roaring through, dumping in a deluge of rain. So far, the worst of it happens to be in Skagit County, specifically near Mount Vernon along the Skagit River. This is Robert Ezell, director of the Washington State Department of Emergency Management.
We saw high water mark hitting concrete earlier this morning. Yesterday, all indicators that we had was it was going to greatly exceed record flood levels by a number of feet. What we have seen in actuality is it came through right at about the record flood level. That doesn't mean to say that we're out of the woods. We're not.
Now, some of those floods have been delayed from when the rain first fell. Why? Because it takes time for the water to move downstream.
Because as the waters come down here, they're still going to be gaining strength, and as they hit the Burlington, Mount Vernon area, we're still expecting to see about 2 feet higher than record flood level. It's going to be most likely worse than you experienced back in 2021.
So that kind of reminds me of what happened in New York during Hurricane Sandy. Everybody thought they got through the worst part of the hurricane, and then they drained the runways out of JFK, and the water went flooding into the neighborhoods, or water was being released from dams and elsewhere and flooded neighborhoods. So this is a result of water finding its way where it finds its way? Is that what they're saying?
Water is like money in politics. It finds every crack
and everything.
Every pavement. You know,
right.
You bring me in, you know I'm going to have a West Wing quote.
Well, that's fine by me. Yes. Yes, we can talk about what happens with yeast and what that does with money in politics. All right, getting back to the serious stuff
Helps
here.
raise the dough.
Exactly.
Ezell says many of the levees throughout the region have been updated and upgraded, and these levees in Skagit County that are designed to protect the Skagit, or the protect from the Skagit River in these rising floodwaters, they have been upgraded, but that might not be enough.
As that water comes down, it's going to be reaching right up to the top of the levees. So, again, the situation is unpredictable. It's dangerous. We don't know what exactly will happen when those floodwaters come through.
So yesterday they were talking about dams failing.
Mm-hmm.
Are they talking about these failing or water splashing over them? They're two very different things.
Well, obviously you can't predict anything on what's going to happen, but they are keeping a close eye on not only the levees but the dams. You mentioned a dam, and that, if we're going to go down to Grays Harbor County, you have a dam down there that is. If you bring it up, I wasn't quite ready for that. Let me pull up my
it's okay.
My
it's a damn
details
frightening
on it.
situation.
Exactly. Where a 107-year-old dam is at risk of failure, if you can imagine that. And the cracks and the structural problems with that dam down in Grays Harbor County were there long before the flooding was here, because this thing was built in 1918.
Yikes.
Well, fortunately, there's not a lot of people that live in the immediate area should that dam fail. And it was at risk of failure before all of this flooding.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people near Montesano that are told, be ready just in case, because the dam is now under added stress as a result of 5 inches of rain in a couple of days.
now is a good time to take a vacation for some people. I wouldn't wait for the order to go personally.
Yeah, there are level 3 go now orders in Washington State. Across western Washington, in some of the hardest hit areas. We have seen some. Probably the biggest population center that's seen it is Mount Vernon, where we've seen some evacuation orders there, concrete. We also now, just in the last couple of hours, have learned that the city of Duval, which is in the Cascade Foothills, east part of King County, has been completely cut off. Now, having used to live out there, you have to cross the Snoqualmie River Valley in order to get to Duval, which is up higher on the hill. So they're in Duval itself is not necessarily in the flood area, but they're cut off from the rest of the region because you have to cross the Snoqualmie Valley, which has been flooding out all the roads.
That's not horrifying at all. At all, at all, at all. Okay, give us some more. What else you got?
Well, there's also people without power whenever we get a storm like this. So if you've got power out in Duval, well, PSE crews aren't going to be able to get there if the floodwaters have knocked out all the roads. Other cities where they have no access, Carnation, Falls City, Skykomish, Concrete, Hamilton, Lyman, all of these places have been at least cut off to the point where power crews can't go out there and help restore power. Whether or not emergency responders can get out there and get around some of the flooded areas, they have more rugged equipment.
Helicopters
and things like that. That's a different story. But people in those towns may be isolated, if not trapped.
Weren't the Skykomish people trapped during the last big snowstorm? They were trapped there for a while because people couldn't get to them.
Well, all of these cities in the rural parts of the counties, particularly in the lower foothills, like Duval, like Snoqualmie, by the nature of being out, for want of a better term, in the middle of nowhere, in a very rural part of the area, you're going to have more power failures. You're going to have more flooding. You're going to have more difficulty just by the very nature of where you're living.
Gotcha. Okay. So what should people be doing right now? How many places are under evacuation orders, get out now orders? Do we have all that?
That is hard to say because there are very specific areas in each of the counties that have been issued orders. If I don't want to misrepresent what orders have been given, but there's a lot of them. The best way to find out is to go to your local county's emergency operations center's website. They would have where you need to, all the information you need to go to evacuate. So that's what I would suggest. A lot of people who need to evacuate have already gotten the notices because they're through push alerts on the phone and things like that. But I've been here in the Western Washington for 20 years, and I've never seen flooding quite this widespread. I've covered a lot of floods before.
Right. I will say this also. If you've never heard one of these alerts go off on your phone, I was one time in New Orleans and a tornado touched down. You can't miss it. No. However, you should check these websites just in case. So that way you know what to do. Now, Jeff, you said there were some political ramifications to what's going on. Can't let you go without that.
Of course. Now, obviously, there's been a state of emergency declared in Washington State for state government. That's statewide state of emergency. Yesterday, Governor Bob Ferguson issued that. He spoke today from the local command center in Skagit County.
The National Weather Service as describing it as potentially catastrophic and potentially having significant loss of life still remains in place. That is our approach to this. We're handling it as if that is the case because it is. It's a very, very serious situation.
To put a finer point on that, the worst of it in some places is still yet to come. Some rivers have reached flood stage. They started to recede, but the predictions are that they're going to go back up and reach historic levels overnight tonight as well. Again, there's a lot of locations where this might happen. Check with your local county's emergency operations center. They will have the best information. But the governor has also asked the federal government to declare a federal disaster area as a result.
We tried to be as persuasive as we could to our partners in the federal government that they need to approve that emergency right away.
So far, the federal government, i.e. the Trump administration, has not granted that request, not declared this a federal disaster area, which would obviously free up funds and allow National Guard troops to come in and help with rescues and things like that.
I thought the National Guard troops can come in anyway.
They can at the direction of the governor. They haven't been federalized. But it frees up more federal resources in responding to this crisis.
You mean federal funding?
Funding and or FEMA resources, FEMA teams that would come out and help respond.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just trying to understand this logistically, right? You can make all the declarations you want, but until it's over, you can't do anything, right?
Well, I mean, that depends on what the agency's goals are and what the deployment plan is.
I'm going to play devil's advocate.
I'm not an emergency management operator.
Neither am I. And if anybody from the National Guard is listening to the show right now, you can actually give us a call at 206-421-5757.
And we do know that 200-some troops have already been deployed at the order of Governor Ferguson to help with rescues and recovery efforts.
So as my understanding is, and this is what I'm trying to get, you can stage beforehand, but you don't go into a disaster area until the disaster's kind of over. Now, there could be flooding still going on, but while the rains are coming down, they don't know where they can or cannot go.
Well, the National Guard has already helped effectuate a number of rescues.
Right.
In fact, up in Whatcom County near the town of Sumas, they, using one of their helicopters, able to pull a man who was on top of his car around rising floodwaters.
Right. No, I mean like FEMA. Right? When
Yeah.
everybody said, it takes a certain amount of time to get water to the Superdome, for example. It still takes time. You should have staged beforehand. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. But you still normally don't come in until after. The National Guard in the state usually handles it till the federal government comes in from outside. Is that about right?
But again, I don't know the details. I'm not an expert in emergency management or emergency response.
No problem.
So
all I know from this is what I saw in the movie Volcano.
Was that the one in L.A.?
That's the one
Tommy
in L.A.
Lee Jones?
Yes.
Great film.
That is not a
Widely
great film.
panned. I love
Not
it.
a great film. Not a great film. Yeah.
It is a difficult time, to say the least. And if we're talking politics, this is not something that is unique to Washington, because in the past, politics have been injected into federal disaster response, where the Trump administration has denied a federal disaster declaration to blue states. For example, the bomb cyclone that was about this time last year, it was November, it was a little bit before.
That was before the
Thanksgiving.
Trump administration.
Yeah, it was before the Trump administration,
Yeah.
but the aftermath and the cleanup took many, many months. And there was no declaration to get federal help on the aftermath to rebuild.
Right. As I understand, and this is for another time, maybe we should do this for the Pogecast, the Politicast, Northwest Politicast this weekend. But maybe we should be discussing about if it's a money thing or a logistics thing or both. This is something I will study up on for tomorrow. Check this out. Jeff Pogela from our sister station, Northwest News Radio. Really appreciate you joining us with all those updates and keeping everybody informed. For the latest details on what's going on with the flood, make sure you tune into our sister station, Northwest News Radio, over on 1000 AM.
Or 97.7 FM.
Or that one, too. Appreciate you joining us today. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. If you want to weigh in on what's going on with the floods, give us a call or text 206-421-5757. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, if you have to leave your house, don't take any risks. Go ahead and follow the evacuation orders and make sure you download the KVI app. Make sure you listen to our friends over at Northwest News Radio also for any updates on the storm if you have to evacuate. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line. Take a call from Corey in Bellevue. Corey, what's going on, man?
Hey, all right. So I was a National Guard soldier, and I was for both floods and forest fires.
Mm-hmm.
By getting a federal emergency, FEMA has stockpiles of sandbags, HESCO barriers, and other construction materials.
Yeah.
And you can also call in the active duty military who have trucks, helicopters, and personnel that they can send immediately, even into the flood zones. We went in there while things were still flooding to evacuate people. We could do high water evacuations using boats. The National Guard actually has a number of amphibious warfare craft that can go into those areas and get people out. So it's not just the money, it's not just after. At the time, those stockpiled federal resources, Army Corps of Engineers has engineering equipment and stuff, as well as the military combat engineers. All those things to be turned loose to reduce the amount of damage being done and to evacuate people, as well as rebuilding afterwards.
That's good to know. How quickly does it take to deploy them?
It can be done in less than an hour for some things. We're always paying attention to events like this, so even before we get mobilized, you'll have people both on the active duty military and the National Guard who are looking at what might be done, and they'll call people and have people standing by. The Emergency Management Center is down on Camp Murray, the National Guard base.
Mm-hmm.
That's a co-located Washington State, federal government, and National Guard resource, and those people I'm sure are there working over hours at that facility, making plans of what can be sent out and knowing what like the mechanical availability is. You know, helicopters, you don't have 100% of them available all the time.
Sure.
So they'll be making priorities of what's going on. They'll be monitoring the flooding. And so as soon as the governor asks for that, they can be sending people out extremely quickly, literally less than an hour. You can have units rolling. Of course, that partially depends on how prepared individual commanders are, but I'm sure in a situation this bad, they're already prepared and ready to go.
So is this something that's waiting on the president's go order, or this something waiting on the governor's go order?
I believe some of it on the governor. It would depend on what the president's already set out there or his FEMA director.
Mm-hmm.
The president probably has to give the things there. At that command level, I don't know what the exact things are, but unit commanders have a certain degree of discretion what they can do.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Corey, I appreciate that. Are you retired or are you in right now?
Technically, I'm retired reserve, but I've only got a few more years left.
Gotcha. So would they be calling you up right now?
The only reason they'd call me is to man a phone bank or to be operating some of the radios or doing logistics, even though I'm an infantry guy.
Gotcha.
I'm at that age now.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I'd go if I were called. They do have a thing called a state guard,
mm-hmm.
which is for older guys like myself. You can serve in that at the same time. And they're always looking for people to volunteer for the state guard. They do help in times of disaster relief so that the younger guys can go out in the field and do the emergency things.
Fascinating.
So if anyone who's a veteran, consider joining the Washington State Guard.
Fascinating. Corey, thank you so much for the informative call. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Ari. Bye.
Yeah, appreciate you being part of the show. There are gaps in my knowledge. I love when KVI Nation calls in to help out. Mike Kerb says over on the Warrior Injury Law text line, they did nothing to round up the homeless. Whoa, he's right about this, by the way. Mike, we didn't see what we normally see before a disaster like this. I didn't see anything about the homeless should go here. We've opened X amount of shelters. He's right. I don't remember seeing any of that before a storm. So before we start going and blaming the Trump administration, I don't think we took care of anything locally either. Watch, just watch. Democrats are going to weaponize this to go after the Trump administration. Even though they say they don't want to work with the feds, all of a sudden there's a flood. Quick, come help us, come help us, come help us. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. The U.S. seized a Venezuelan tanker. Does that mean World War III? No, but we'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, we are going to hear why it is so important for you to sign those initiatives to protect girls' sports from one of the girls who lost to a boy who wanted to compete at the girl level. But before we get to any of that, an update on a story we had earlier on in the show. There was a semi-truck accident which rear-ended a car and pushed it into a truck, killing the driver near the SR-18 interchange in Auburn, Washington earlier today. This was a tip from some of our wonderful KVI listeners. The truck driver was arrested for vehicular homicide. There is currently only one person in custody in the King County Jail for vehicular homicide who was brought in by the Washington State Patrol. Now, we can't confirm it's the person, so we're not going to give you the name, but shall we just say I'm not surprised by this name. So now we have to talk to our friends at ICE, and we have to see if this person is yet another illegal with a commercial driver's license. Or is this another illegal without a commercial driver's license? Or is this, who knows, any of these permutations? we could have any one of them. Is it one of these situations? I will just tell you, it is very, very likely it is one of these situations. So what I'm going to do after the show today, I'm going to reach out to our friends at the Washington State Patrol and ICE, now that I have a name, and we'll find out if Ice Baby has any information on this person, now that I know exactly who they are. Meanwhile, switching gears over to what's happening outside our own borders. So the media is going absolutely bonkers crazy. Why? Because the federal government seized an oil tanker that was coming out of Venezuela. So I want to make sure I got this right. You don't like when we blow things up like the narco-terrorists. And you say, why didn't you board them? Why didn't you seize them? Why didn't you take them into custody? So then we go board them and seize them and take them into custody. And now you're mad also. Can you somebody explain this to me? Whatever Donald Trump does, it's super, super bad. Orange man, bad. We're gonna be in World War III. I like our chances against Venezuela. Just saying. What? Also, you guys are the ones who are all mad about dictatorships. You literally have a dictator who won't give up power after losing an election. Can somebody explain this to me like I'm 5? Explain to me the Democrat perspective on any of this. I'll explain it to you so you understand our perspective on this for a second. Why would we seize an oil tanker coming out of Venezuela? Well, it's probably only going one of two places, China or Iran. Okay, so if it's coming from Iran and going to Venezuela, if it's coming from Venezuela going to Iran, going to China, I have to double check exactly its manifest and where it was going. But you realize if you deny them resources, then guess what? It may further the collapse of the regime. And those of you who say, we don't want to be a nation building. Well, we're not sending in any troops, are we? We just took their little boat. If they don't have oil, if they can't export oil, if they don't have oil coming in or they can't export oil going out, guess what? They either don't have money or they don't have resources. And that denies them the resources they need to stay in power. And then you might actually have the guy who was elected be able to depose Maduro. Guess what? Then the military doesn't have oil to power its vehicles to oppress the people like they did when Maduro lost the election and still managed to hold on to power. So you don't want to blow up the oil tanker, right? And now they're all mad that Trump might keep the oil for the U.S. What would you guys like us to do with it? Should we sink it? Should we just sink it in the ocean? Let's do that. No, really. What do you want him to do with the oil? Would you prefer we give it away to somebody? There are poor people who need oil. What do you want us to do with it? Yeah, we'll find the Tin Man somewhere. Oil can. We'll give it to him. What do you want the man to do at this point? Unbelievable.
Well, you know what they want to do. Leave the poor drug runners alone. The sweet, germ-faced cartels. Leave them alone. The drug runners, smugglers, human traffickers. Oh, the humanity. Will somebody think of the sweet, sweet criminals?
No, Mike, you got it all wrong. Oh, the sweet germed-faced oil barons who brought the oil out, the oil shippers, them, right? Don't they hate the oil? Don't they want the electric cars and all that? No matter what, there's nobody they like in this equation. Nobody. Because the person they really don't like is Donald Trump, and it's not going to stop. It's just not going to stop. Incredible. So they're mad about drugs. They're mad about oil. What else are they mad about today? Here's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
The president has taken a new approach that has not been taken by any administration for quite some time to actually focus on what's going on in our own backyard. And there are two things that are very important to this administration. Number one, stopping the flow of illegal drugs into the United States of America, which we know has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. The president promised on the campaign trail that he would demolish the foreign terrorist organizations and drug cartels around the world, especially right here in our own hemisphere, and you have seen that he is delivering on that promise. With respect to the oil and what happened yesterday, the Department of Justice requested and was approved for a warrant to seize a vessel because it's a sanctioned shadow vessel known for carrying black market sanctioned oil to the IRGC, which you know is a sanctioned entity. So the president is committed to stopping the illegal flow of drugs into our country. He's also fully committed to effectuating this administration's sanction policy, and that's what you saw and the world saw take place yesterday.
So let's clarify this, shall we? They're sending oil to the terrorist regime in Iran. It's sanctioned by the UN, the US, and pretty much every other country on the planet. But we should have just let it go to the terrorist group. So that way the terrorist group can have oil, the number one state sponsor of terror can have oil, and so that Venezuela can make money from selling the oil, who's also a communist dictatorship. Gee, why do we seize the tanker? You would have thought they killed 1 million puppies. You would have thought they killed a puppy. You would have thought Donald Trump literally went out on the White House lawn, took a puppy, shot it in the head, and said, "Make America great again." You would have thought that's what happened. They seized an oil tanker from a communist dictator that's under sanctions, going to a terrorist group that's under sanctions. And the media is mad about it. Can we reflect on this for a second? They're mad about it. They hate whatever he does, even if it's good for the U.S. Watching the people on MS Now or M Snow have a complete meltdown over this. Watching CNN have a complete meltdown over this. It's delicious. So who are you sticking up for here? Which side are you guys on? Iran? Maduro? I'm trying to figure out who it is. You are now advocating for a communist regime, a communist dictatorship that is not a democracy, to be able to sell oil to a terrorist group. And when you're not doing that, you are mad that President Trump is blowing up narco-terror boats coming out of the same dictatorship, coming here to kill Americans. Now, if we invaded Venezuela, they'd be mad too, right? No boots on the ground. How dare you invade a sovereign nation? Blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is, he can do no right. He can do no right. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So why are we doing this? Here's Joe Kent. Man, I love watching him testify. This is my new favorite thing, watching Joe Kent give it to the Democrats.
Another issue that we are addressing right now, thanks to the decisive leadership of President Trump, is the scourge of fentanyl, gang, and cartel violence. Under President Trump's leadership, we've designated these cartels and gangs as terrorist organizations, and we've done that rightfully so. These individuals, these terrorists, have killed hundreds of thousands of Americans, as these angel families will tell you firsthand. What President Trump has done by designating them as terrorists has allowed us to turn the tools of the intelligence community against them and predominantly watch list them as terrorists to prevent them from ever coming into America in the first place. To date, we've added about 35,000 of these narco-terrorists to our terrorist watch list, and we've stopped just around 6,000 of these terrorists from ever entering our country, from setting foot inside of America, so they can no longer kill Americans with impunity.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so what are you mad about now? What is there to be mad about now? You just don't like Donald Trump. You just don't like Donald Trump. Okay, so now that we've put this whole tanker controversy to rest, by the way, you should look up the video of the U.S. soldiers, sailors, whoever they were, who were actually rappelling down those ropes from the helicopter onto the tanker. It was awesome. Oh, there's nothing like the U.S. military. Tom Massie has introduced a resolution to withdraw the U.S. from NATO, calling it a Cold War relic. If you wanted to know why Tom Massie is not very smart, all I got to do is point to this. Here's what he said in a statement. NATO is a Cold War relic. We should withdraw from NATO, use that money to defend our own country, not socialist countries. NATO was created to counter the Soviet Union, which collapsed over 30 years ago. Since then, U.S. participation has cost taxpayers trillions of dollars and continued to risk U.S. involvement in foreign wars. Our Constitution did not authorize permanent foreign entanglements, something our founding fathers explicitly warned us against. America should not be the world's security blanket, especially when wealthy countries refuse to pay for their own defense. Okay, there are some legit arguments in there, but show that you are completely ignorant of history. Let's start with this. How did isolationism work out in World War I and World War II? Let's just throw that out there for a second. Now let's do the Cold War for a second. What was NATO? Supposed to be a bloc against the Soviet Union. You literally have a KGB guy running Russia who wants to restore the Soviet Union country by country by country. You know what would have been nice? Let's say after the Afghanistan withdrawal, NATO, everybody except for the U.S., all the European countries, had said, okay, this is bad. We're going to protect Ukraine. We're going to protect Ukraine because we know that's where Putin's going next. And it actually stepped up to spend the money on it. They were counting on the U.S. bailing them out. And that is a foreign policy catastrophe on multiple levels. But that's Joe Biden. Everything he did was a foreign policy or domestic policy catastrophe. Now, if you want to say to me, Ari, Europe needs to step up, I agree. And that's exactly what President Trump made Europe do. Exactly right. But you want to withdraw from NATO, leaving them alone. What happens if Putin conquers all of Europe? Whose problem is that next? I kind of saw this movie somewhere before. Haven't these things happened before? We've seen this before. Nazi soldiers driving down streets of countries in Europe. Yes, that's what could happen. And then it very much becomes our problem. For some reason, people are acting like we only have railroads and we don't have airplanes in this day and age. And we don't have aircraft carriers. Yeah, there are ways that Russia can threaten us. There are ways that Russia does threaten us. Is Russia what it was under the Soviet Union? No, of course not. But that doesn't mean they are not a threat. There's an axis of evil. Iran, China, Russia, and a few other countries. All of them want to take down the United States. So let's play your little game for a second, Tom Massie. Let's withdraw from Europe. Let's withdraw from NATO. And then what? So Putin now steamrolls into Europe, takes over Europe. Now, by taking over European resources, he can now do more business with China. He can now restore Iran. Let's not forget that because Putin was so busy with the Ukraine stuff, he couldn't help Iran and Syria as much as he was before, which is why the Syrian regime fell, because Iran didn't have the resources to prop them up while fighting against Israel, which was taking out Hamas, Hezbollah, and everybody else. Let's play your little game out to the end. So now, you want to withdraw from NATO, Putin's able to go after Europe, and then he has their resources to help Iran and to help China and to work with China. Now what? It's going to seem like a small investment in blood and treasure, what we're doing right now versus what could be in the future. Does Zelensky suck? Absolutely. Is Ukraine corrupt? Absolutely. Should NATO, should the European countries in NATO be stepping up more? 1,000%. I'm agreeing with all of that. But to fully withdraw from NATO and not give them any support whatsoever is going to be a long-term problem for us. And this is just as dumb as when Democratic senators right before 9/11 said, everything's hunky-dory in the world, let's shut down the CIA. Yeah, that actually did happen. That actually happened. If you want to say we're not doing this efficiently, fine. You want to withdraw from NATO? Tom Massey is not a serious person. I know a lot of people look at him and say he's just like Rand Paul. Rand Paul votes no on everything. No. Rand Paul does not vote no on everything. Rand Paul always votes no on wasteful spending. Not everything. And also when Rand Paul makes an argument, I always understand it. And though I may disagree with it, it is based in fact. It is based in historical knowledge. It is based in science. Tom Massey just seems to be based on Tom Massey. I want to be on the headlines today. I don't even know if it's stupidity. I'm not sure it is stupidity. It's about, I want the attention on me. Come look at me. That's more what the Tom Massey thing seems to be. Okay, who's Tom Massey's partner in crime? Marjorie Taylor Greene. You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene put up a post yesterday talking about how happy she was to be hanging out with her friends from Code Pink for America First. You guys know who Code Pink is, right? They're the Looney Tunes who wear the pink T-shirts and the Hamas keffiyehs, who are mad about the Iraq War, and then when the Iraq War was over, needed a new cause. So it's just they hate America. They're funded by the Chinese Communist government. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is taking pictures with them and not doing what Marco Rubio does, shutting them down. Not doing what Brian Mast does, shutting them down. But saying, I like these guys. They're wearing keffiyehs because they hate Jews also. I like these guys because they believe in America first, that we shouldn't be spending our money overseas. What a fundamental misunderstanding. So to show you're America first, you're hanging out with the people who oppose your wars on terror, who are funded by the Chinese Communist government, and are wearing the colors and keffiyehs of an organization that doesn't just say death to Israel, but also says death to the U.S. That's America first? That's America first. By the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think, lost whatever small ounces of credibility she had left with that picture because people who were defending her to me on our side up until now are finally like, oh. I'm not going to say I was right from the beginning, but I will say this. It's impossible for me to be disappointed in Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Would you like to know why? Because I was never impressed with them to begin with. I saw this coming a mile away. I'm glad so many people are waking up to it now. I posted that picture. I shared it. I shared that picture on social media so everybody can see it. You can see it over on my channels, Ari Hoffman Official on Facebook and Instagram, The Hotfather over on Twitter. You can see her hanging out with the anti-American, Chinese communist-funded lunatics that all they do all day long is pester Republicans. That's what they do, and support terrorist organizations. When these people say they're America first, they're not. What they are is anti-other things. They claim it's America first. It's not. It's historical ignorance. And I'm starting to wonder what Marjorie Taylor Greene's motivation is. Does she want a job on MS Now? Is that what she's going for? Or whatever the hell they call this thing? Is she looking for a job on CNN? Or has she realized she burned every bridge she had in the Republican Party, never accomplished anything electorally, and is now looking to host a show on some random channel like Matt Gaetz? Is that the goal here? What exactly is she trying to do? Or just burn every bridge on the way out? What is Tom Massey trying to accomplish? Neither one of them are MAGA. Neither one of them are America First. They are grifters. They are doing this for the PR. That is what's going on here. Don't fall for the act. You disagree with me, give me a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, how deep does the Somali fraud go? And how insane are the Democrats for continuing to defend it? We'll have that, plus a whole lot more. But first, Todd Herman's Daily Thoughtcast right now on the Ari Hoffman Show. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, download the KVI app, subscribe on whatever your preferred podcast platform is to the Ari Hoffman Show, and check out KVI.com, by the way. Got a whole bunch of new articles up before they even get talked about on air. That's right. We always publish those things the night before, so you can be the first one to see these stories before we even do them here. Also, while you're there, sign up to become a KVI insider. So that way, you guys get notified of all the latest events, contests, and other happenings. Over on the Warrior Injury Law text line, I love that a couple of you, I got Steve here and somebody else from the 425. Both of you are suggesting that Trump should take the oil from the Venezuelan tanker and put it in the strategic oil reserve. Oh, I do like that. So, when Trump said he was going to fix that thing and get the gas for a lot cheaper than Joe Biden did, that's a great way to do it. Seize the tanker. So let's do some math. How much the military operation cost to seize that tanker. Do a cost-benefit analysis. Maybe we should just take everybody's oil. Let's do that. Any sanctioned oil, let's take it and put in the U.S. strategic oil reserves. Are they going to start booby trapping it? That may be a bad idea in hindsight. Maybe. That may be something that's a bad idea. Keep that in mind for later. But yes, that's not a bad idea, guys. You guys are very, very funny. This one here from Bob in the 509. A few years ago, we had a significant snow event isolating most of the folks east of Gold Bar and west of Stevens Pass on Highway 2. Jay Inslee went on Seattle TV and claimed to be personally helping the affected folks. Actually, all he did was send state troopers to block the highway. For 3 nights, local folks put together 50 to 60 truck and trailer loads of food, fuel, and water, medical bar grocery store, and convoyed up to the stranded residents without electricity 40 miles of the Sky Valley. I remember this. We were on air for this. Was this during the Snowpiercer event or the other one before it? The troopers reluctantly allowed passage at our own risk. While we were forming the second night's convoy of 4x4 trucks and trailers, the governor was delivering a press conference claiming credit for saving stranded residents. He literally did nothing but impede efforts to help. That's it. He said Allie Bradley was with Q13 at the time and covered our efforts on the first 2 nights. Supposedly, a rep from the governor's office called and hinted of future access issues if the station covered the third night's effort. Many locals have been quite vociferous about what they thought about Inslee during Allie's interviews. Now Sideshow Bob is traveling, talking about making political hay. Traveling about making political hay and taking credit while rural and small town folks deal with flooding. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think you're absolutely onto something here. Because I remember all this happening. I remember Jay Inslee claiming all this credit, and we said, you haven't sent in any resources. All these random people are doing this. Yeah, I definitely do remember that. Switching gears over to how deep this fraud goes out of the Somalian community out in Minnesota. Trump Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced the start of a month he had opened an investigation into the feckless mismanagement by Minnesota Democrat Governor Tim Walz that allowed what U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota, Daniel Rosen, called the largest COVID-19 fraud scheme in history. According to Fox News, days later, the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform announced it was launching its own investigation into widespread fraud in Minnesota's social service programs under Governor Tim Walz's watch, as well as the state's effort to cover it up in retaliation against whistleblowers who sought to protect taxpayer dollars. Yeah, something to wonder here. So Tim Walz was in Seattle, what was it, Tuesday? So he was in Seattle for a fundraiser for Bob Ferguson. He's got the biggest fraud in state history, and he has time to come out here and fundraise for Bob Ferguson. This doesn't help his state in any way, shape, or form. He's got this entire mess out there that he's not dealing with, but he had time to come out here and fundraise for Bob Ferguson. Here's how this fraud started. On November 7th, 2016, Feeding Our Future, the organization that, according to the DOJ, was mastermind behind the largest share of the fraud, was launched. Through the Minnesota Department of Education, initially denied their application to be a sponsor in the state's child and adult care food program, the agency ultimately approved the nonprofit in appeal in 2017. In August 2018, they started claiming that they had these meals, 13,000 meals and snacks that month. The Minnesota Department of Education conducted its only administrative review that same year, and according to the Office of the Auditor, the review resulted in serious findings that required follow-up but they never conducted a follow-up investigation. Yet, the following year, 2019, they received $3.4 million, and then the real fraud began in 2020 during COVID, when they had all that. So I want to make sure I got this clear. An organization that was denied access and then failed an audit was then given millions of dollars, and you're surprised, hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're now surprised that there was a ton of fraud. You think this stuff isn't happening here in Washington? We have, through Washington Doge, found many organizations that are getting millions of your taxpayer dollars, and I can't figure out why. Groups with ties to terrorism, groups that have been proven fraudulent, and they're getting your taxpayer dollars. I guarantee the same nonsense that was going on in Minnesota and Minneapolis is going on here. When we come back, my friends, when you feel helpless and you think there's nothing you can do, there are things you can do. You can fight to sign these initiatives to keep boys out of girls' sports, guarantee parental rights, and have voter ID. And one of the girls affected by this, one of the student athletes, will be joining us when we come back to tell us why it's important for you to help her out and all the other girls who compete in sports. We'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Our friends over at Let's Go Washington have two initiatives that they are circulating right now. One is to protect parental rights so that parents know what's happening with their kids in school. And the other one is to protect girls' sports so that boys who can't compete at their own level don't get to cheat and head on over to girls' sports. I have been very, very, very impressed with a few young women who have been stepping up to call out this injustice where so many other people, including those in power, are not doing so at all. Joining us now to discuss on the Warrior Injury Law Studio line is Annalee Wilson. Annalee, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Such a pleasure to have you. Now, I've heard you speak a couple times. You're a high schooler. You're a student athlete. Tell us what happened to you.
Yeah, so I'm currently an athlete at Eastmont High School, and in 8th grade, I competed against a transgender boy, but I didn't know until after the race, and it was at the Kashmir Junior Olympics.
Okay, so you're competing against this person, and this person took the top award, which is something that probably should have gone to you?
Technically, yes, because I was the first place female, biological female.
I got you.
To cross the line. So, yeah.
Yeah, I got you. So afterwards, you realized this when you were at the podium. How did you figure out what was going on here?
So I was standing on the podium in second place,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw some people down below on the podium looked upset, and I couldn't figure out why. For a second, I thought maybe it was me. And then I stepped off the podium, and some other people informed me that the person who was on the first place spot on the podium was actually a biological male.
Unbelievable.
And that's how I found out.
Is this something, what did you feel like at the time? Explain to us how that felt to all of you. You work so hard, and then you find out your win was stolen.
Yeah, it was really disappointing. I mean, it was definitely sad. At first, I was really surprised and just kind of shocked because I'd heard about this happening to other girls in different parts of the country, but I didn't think it could happen here in such a small town to me. So definitely it was disappointing.
Gotcha. So now after that, what'd you guys do? Did you guys file a complaint? What happened after that?
Me and some of my other friends were frustrated about this, and we were talking about how it was unfair at the meet, and some other adults on the transgender kids team told us that if we were going to complain, that we needed to leave and go somewhere else to do so.
Oh, so they don't really care about women's sports. They're just caring about this virtue signaling nonsense. Were there any repercussions of what happened to you at school with your school when you brought this up?
No, my school was luckily super supportive of this. I mean, I think they were maybe a little nervous, but they were supportive of me.
That's great because not all student athletes do their schools defend them. Some of your friends that you've met through this whole process have told us stories where the schools actually came after them. Now, you're going around the state to these Let's Go Washington events, and you're getting more and more support to help collect the signatures for these initiatives to protect girls' sports. And something I really like about the speeches you're giving is you're directly calling out the people in power, and you're a teenager. You're a kid in high school, and you're directly calling these people out. I'm really impressed with that. Tell us about it.
Thank you. Yeah, so the main issue with this is that it's not the transgender kids' fault, and it's not biological females' fault. It's adults who are in charge, and they're supposed to protect us and protect everyone, and they're not.
Yeah. That's exactly right. They should be protecting everybody, and instead they're protecting that boy. Now, I said this, I think it was the first time you and I met, maybe it was the second. But when we met, I think I was speaking right after you guys, and wow, there was no reason for me to speak at this event because you guys were amazing. You gals were amazing. I shouldn't say you guys. You gals were amazing. And when I got up there to speak, I was so impressed with what you and your friends were talking about. Because, first of all, you're much more respectful to the governor and Chris Rakedahl, the superintendent, and Nick Brown, the attorney general, than I am. I have names for all three of them, which we're not going to do right now because that would make me look bad in front of the teenager. But I was so impressed that you and your friends are stepping up when so many adults don't. We've seen instances where people come to protest you, claiming they're all about equality, and yet they're the ones trying to shut down girls' sports by letting boys compete in them. But there's something else that I said at the time. I said, it's not just the student athletes that you're sticking up for. It's people like my daughter who have to do sports for credit, right? My daughter is not athletic. We're Jews. We're not known for athleticism. You know what I'm saying? So she does not compete for state trophies or anything like that or scholarships. She competes for credit. And can you imagine getting injured by somebody in a wrestling match, in girls wrestling or girls soccer or girls basketball or any of these sports because some dude who can't hack it at his own level is competing against you?
Yeah, I mean it's dangerous and it's disappointing and it's sad because I mean this affects not only people who are competitive and want to go further. I mean, again, it affects people who do this for credit, or it affects when girls need to change in the locker room. I mean, there's so many different people that this causes issues for.
Yeah, and also we tell our daughters, don't ignore your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, get out of there. If it's a parking garage, if it's a park, if it's an elevator, especially if it's a bathroom or a locker room. And now you have people like Bob Ferguson, Chris Rakedall, and Nick Brown saying, ignore it. It's perfectly fine. And there have been issues elsewhere. Tell me, since you started calling out these people in power by name, has there been any response from their offices, or they just ignore you guys?
Nope, they have just ignored us.
What a bunch of cowards. What a bunch of absolute cowards. Annalie, before we let you go, if you have a message to give to my audience, before we let you go, what's your message?
Yes, my message is that if you can and you're eligible, please sign these initiatives. They're extremely important to female athletes all across Washington State and, I mean, so many other people. And if you're able to, please do what's right and sign these initiatives. It's important to me and several other people all across Washington.
Annalie, you're a rock star. You're an absolute rock star. You're very, very brave. We appreciate what you're doing. And everybody who's out there, listen to what she said. She cannot sign these initiatives. She is not 18 years old yet. You can. So what I want you to do is go to Let's Go Washington's website. If you haven't signed it yet, either request an initiative sheet or find out where there are signature gatherers, sign these initiatives, and don't wait till the deadline to get them back. First of all, would you trust the post office? No, of course not. But second of all, is that you have winter break coming up, you've got Christmas, you've got New Year's, mail is delayed, you're going to go on vacation, you're going to go somewhere else, kids are out of school, they're running around the house, you're going to forget about it, and the people from Let's Go Washington need to count these things to make sure they have enough and bring them in. So if you haven't signed yet, find a signing location, get an initiative, get it, send it back in, even if there's only one signature on it. And all of you who are holding on to these things going, I can get more, that's great, but we need the ones you have. So go to Let's Go Washington's website, find out where you can sign these things or how you can get a ballot. Annalie Wilson, you're an amazing, amazing young lady. Keep up the great, great work, and best of luck competing this year.
Thank you so much. It was great being on here. Thank you.
Such a pleasure having you. You take care and be in touch anytime when you want to talk about these issues. We're happy to have you. Only good news to wrap up the show. Your good news headlines put a smile on your face heading into your evening commute. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Only good news to wrap up another amazing episode of the Ari Hoffman Show right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. And before we do the usual feel-good stories, after talking to Anna Lee Wilson, I have such faith in our youth because her and all these girls are standing up for women's sports, for girls' sports. And what do we talk about all the time, Mike? Oh, the millennials or the zennials or the kids or whatever. And I think the problem is we're distracted by the stupid we see in the headlines and don't realize there's a lot of other people that aren't in the headlines, and there are good kids still out there. I'm really excited that I'm going to be going to the Turning Point USA convention, broadcasting from there next week with young Zach, because every time I go, I get my batteries recharged, where I look around and I see, hey, there's a whole bunch of kids here that want to be conservative. There's a whole bunch of kids here that want traditional American values. And they gave up their winter break to come to a political conference. Sure, there's pyrotechnics, but it's not like Fort Lauderdale, if you know what I'm saying. They gave up their weekend, and there's going to be tens of thousands of people there. The conference is sold out. There are a ton of people going. I'm really, really excited, and my daughter's going for the first time. Her generation, Annalie's generation, I think they're about the same age. They are taking an active role in civics because they see that some adults are messing this up, and they want to make sure that doesn't happen anymore. That's inspiring. That's really, really inspiring. Switching gears over to a story from Cairo 7. Do you want a job for the summer? This story comes around every single year. That's right, my friends. Applications are open to become one of the drivers of the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile for 2026. The Hot Dogger program, started in 1988, was designed to develop top talent, inspire future leaders who embody innovation, creativity, and community spirit. It has since sparked nearly 200 million smiles over the miles. Typically, the company gets more than 5,000 applicants that are cut down to a dozen. The position is technically called Oscar Mayer Wienermobile spokesperson. The journey will begin the first week of June 2026 and will last a year, but the job doesn't just include seeing all the sights around the country. The Hot Doggers are also responsible for maintaining the 27-foot-long Wienermobile as it drives through more than 30 states over the year with more than 300 stops. It's funny. A friend of ours who's a mechanic, he's got a picture that he's very proud of. The Oscar Mayer Wienermobile broke down, and they had to fix it here, and the people who were maintaining it couldn't maintain it. So he's got the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile on a lift in his shop. He said, I couldn't believe it fit. Because of the ceiling clearance and everything else. He said, yeah, I couldn't believe it fit. But he's very, very proud of that. Those chosen will undergo a 2-week immersive onboarding process and job training. Okay, don't eat all the merchandise. Don't do that. And here's where the nearest restrooms are in case you do. They also have regular meetings with various teams. It is helpful that the recent college graduates have experience working with the public, prior travel, good time management, work both independently as part of a team, and are people persons. In addition to a college degree, the lucky winners will need a valid driver's license and good driving record. So no illegal aliens. Oh, sorry, too soon. Ability to work weekends and pass various driving and background checks, among other requirements. The base salary is $35,600 for a summer. Mike, I would have totally done that. For a summer gig, fresh out of college? With an additional weekly allowance of $150 or $7,200 a year and 18 paid time off days. Health benefits and hotel costs are also covered. How did I not know about this back then? I would have totally done this job. The Wienermobile started rolling in 1936, so it is celebrating its 90th year on the road right now. You can actually go to Oscar Mayer's website to apply for the position. That sounds awesome. I mean, I thought the money I made being a water skiing instructor was good. It was nothing compared to that. Wow. Driving around the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile for a summer? That sounds like a lot of fun. Well, that's going to do it for us today, my friends. But fear not, the fun's not over because we will be back tomorrow with more insane stories and more exciting guests. You've been listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio.